Some families flip through photo albums, others turn to sites like Ancestry.com, but my next guest decided to explore their family history a little differently with a 425-mile bike ride across the country of their ancestors. In The Road to San Donato, local author Robert Cocuzzo dives into what he learned on the 2-week cycling trip through Italy that he took with his father. Rob joins me now. He's also the editor of Nantucket Magazine and a contributor to a number of publications, including Esquire, Town and County. The book's great, by the way. Good to see you, Rob.
Good to
Stephen Cocuzzo is his father, joined him, an avid and persistent cyclist, to say the least, who continues to ride a brakeless fixed-gear bike, whatever that is, even after being hit by cars, trucks, and city buses a mere 21 times. Stephen, it's great to meet you. He's laughing. I don't know why. Well, what ended up is that you're going to answer that question about why? Why are you laughing? I didn't think so. Okay. Well, go ahead.
No. The reason I'm laughing is that it was out of my control.
Wasn't out of your control. I was going to get to this later, but let's break it down before I get to you. 4 buses, 16 cars, and a pickup truck you were hit by. That hasn't convinced you that you should seek an alternative mode of transportation?
But this is the problem. The thing is, I'm being forced to change my way of life because people aren't paying attention to what they're doing.
I would argue you're being forced to change your way of life because living is a good thing. Would you?
Well, just for the record, he now does have a brake on his bike. So,
he does? Well,
yeah,
I'm sorry. My apologies. So what ended up is this 425-mile journey that is unbelievably thrilling and interesting to your family's hometown in Italy. Originally was intended as a cross-country thing in the United States. What happened?
Well, then when my grandfather, my dad's dad, fell ill, he voiced a regret to me that he'd never gone back to this village where our family's from. And that regret kind of horrified me. I realized that he'd lived his whole life talking about this place in such fabled terms, and he had never gone back. And so we decided to go in his honor.
When you say we decided to go, what I thought was interesting, even though you had these other plans, you described calling your father on the phone, and without even telling him what the deal was, you knew exactly what your kid was going to propose, didn't you?
Well, it's something that he brought up to me a few years ago, and it was sort of a fantasy in my mind because the idea of taking that much time off back then in my career was an awful lot.
You'd rather stick around town and get hit by a bus, for example, just as an alternative.
Well, so it hit me one time. I said, you know what? We have to do this cross-country. And so I called Rob up. I said, I have an idea for your next book. You and me pedal cross country. And it was sort of harebrained because I really didn't think to the extent of it. So he thought about it for a while, and then he called me back. He says, better yet, let's do Italy.
And the goal was broader than that, Rob. It wasn't just to get to the place that your grandfather never got. It was about relation. What was it?
Absolutely.
Really
Well,
what was the goal?
The goal was to allocate some time to spend with someone that had been in my life my whole life. And yet there was so many things that were left unsaid between us, I thought, and I needed an opportunity to really ask the questions that were burning in my mind for so long.
And by the way, you're of a certain age, not very much younger than me. We don't talk a lot about relationships and those kinds of things. Right. So this was a rare kind of thing. Can you describe briefly, when I read things like on one day, I think I got this right, you were doing like 80 miles where you describe, I don't know if this is hyperbolic, 40 miles straight uphill as part of the journey?
Unbelievable.
It was a daunting.
Even for you it was unbelievable?
Yeah,
yes.
It was daunting.
What'd that feel like?
The thing is, at first it was really daunting because we hadn't even left Florence. And I had been warned by this woman I know that owns a bike company here in Watertown, and she said, be prepared to climb. So I thought, all right, I pedaled through Vermont, I pedaled up to Montreal, and we were not even out of Florence yet. We were really sucking wind going up some of these hills.
If it had not been for his father, do you think you would have continued this thing?
No. I think that if he wasn't with me, I would have pulled the parachute. I needed to be held to the
you thought from time to time?
Oh, I was suffering. I was suffering in an unbelievable way. I mean, it was terrible. My knee was falling apart. My bike was falling apart. Everything was falling apart. And as I was just telling my dad, because they're about to do a different trip, my mom and he, every adventure is full of misadventure. And you just have to be ready for that to happen.
You know, what I found interesting, I didn't know this was coming at all. I thought it was just going to be about this developing relationship between father and son. You write powerfully about this far darker chapter in Italy's history, about the road to San Donato for Italian Jews in the 40s. Tell us about that.
And foreign Jews. So, with the rise of fascism, Mussolini sent out the Jews from places like Florence to these tiny, remote mountain outposts and interned them there. When the fascists came, they went to these outposts to take them and send them to places like Auschwitz. That was the case for San Donato. There were about 30 Jews that were interned there. When the fascists came, they went to get the Jews there, and they were nowhere to be found.
And you became obsessed with a fear that your family might have been on the wrong side of this thing.
Yeah, it terrorized me. And it was a fear that I almost didn't want to know the answer to, because I thought, how do I reconcile this potential history with my own present? And my wife, or my future wife at that time, is
relatively
Jewish.
well known in town, I should say, Jenny Johnson, yes.
And so we were already discussing raising our kids, our future kids, in the Jewish tradition. I thought, what if my forefathers had given up people?
One of the things that I really struck me is when you ride into town, you don't know who you're going to meet, what members of family, if any. When you see this statue that has the family name emblazoned, what was that like that
It was
minute?
the most powerful, one of the most powerful moments of our lives. Yeah, I mean, we were both in tears, and we're not brought to tears often. And it was, especially after traveling hundreds of miles, to see our name carved in the stone.
So, is your relationship with him different today than it was before you took off on this journey?
Fortunately, it's the same. We've always been very close. I dragged him into my passions. I got him skiing at 3 years old, got him to rock climbing, all these things that he ended up surpassing me.
But you know him better now, don't you,
yes.
than you did before?
Yeah.
How does that feel? Is that something?
It's a great feeling, because what happened in this whole thing, too, was role reversal. The father became the son became the father. And he took me totally under his wing. And that was even before we got on the plane. 2 days before we were to leave, he called me up, and I says, Rob, I'm trying to find these Chinese shoes to bring with us so we can pack them lightly. He says, Dad, we have far more pressing things than your shoes, which is your passport. So 2 days back and forth to
His passport was expired. He hadn't been out of the country.
It was 3 months.
And he took care of it.
Yeah.
And we 2 days later, we got my passport.
We only have 15 seconds left. Do you know him a lot better than you did before this started? The guy who, as you said, has known you your whole life?
You know what's interesting? After I've written this book, I've learned more. I thought I did a deep dive for the course of 9 months of writing, and I've learned more. And so I'm waiting for the opportunity to do a reprinting, so I'm going to add more.
Can I tell you something? I wouldn't even cycle to the corner store, and I love this book. It was terrific. It's great to meet you.
Same
Stephen.
here.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Rob, terrific
Appreciate it.
work.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you
It's really
so
great.
much.
Good to see you both. The book again is The Road to San Donato, Fathers, Sons, and Cycling Across Italy.